Ladies and gentlemen, today is the day. Welcome to the AFL double upload day. We are going to talk about two videos in relation, but this is going to be the first one. We are going to look at every single AFL team from bottom to top, and we're going to see and we're going to grade how well their season was overall. Now, we still have finals football, of course, but that's for another time. That's going to be later today. But for now, let's talk about the regular season and let's talk about who had the best season. Let's do it. What's up, everybody? It's the Aidan Sports Show. Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to look at the AFL ladder. We're going to look at from the bottom to the very top of the ladder, and we're going to see which team had a better season. We're going to be grading each team, going to give a little bit of my opinion on the teams as most of them have ended their season and others are looking forward to the finals. But before we get started, please like and subscribe to the Aidan Sports Show YouTube channel. Turn notifications on. Only 3 subscribers away from 190, and we are only 13 subscribers away from 200. The big goal there. Let's see how quickly we can get there. But of course, enough about that. Let's talk about the AFL. Now, I do need to give a little context of how this video is going to work. So, first of all, I'm going to look back at my AFL predictions video. Now, I don't recommend anybody go watch that because it is extremely flawed in terms of quality. But overall, I'm going to look at my predictions of where I thought every team would be and where they actually finished. And with that, I'm going to grade what I think the team had overall. So the grade could be from A to F. And of course, some teams might have higher and some teams might have lower, depending on where they were expected to finish as well. For example, the Adelaide Crows, who are 18th, might get a higher overall grade than North Melbourne, who finished above them, just because of where people expected them to finish and where they overall finished, etc. So, in saying that, I feel like I've explained it enough. Again, if you guys agree or disagree with my gradings, feel free to let me know in the comments below. At the end of the day, if you barrack for a team, you would know more about that team than I would specifically. But at the end of the day, this is where I'm going to go with this video. I feel like this is a great video idea, and I want to try and make this a yearly thing with the AFL, of course, being it's a yearly sport. So, we're going to start off with the very first team. 18th, the Adelaide Crows. I predicted them to finish 17th on the ladder, and my overall grading for them is going to be a C. With the Adelaide Crows, it's pretty simple here. Of course, I did expect them to finish 17th, but at the end of the day, we all knew exactly where Adelaide was going to be. So it's not really that big of a comparison to say they finished exactly where they were supposed to be. They are a team that is clearly very young, a team that's clearly rebuilding, did not have the best of years. The positives out of Adelaide is definitely the end of the season, but I can't give them a C, a B, or even an A because of the end of the season. At the end of the day, this is the reflection of the whole season, and overall they only did win 3 games, so it's difficult to say that they were any better or worse than what I expected. But the end of the season really gave a lot of hope towards that team, and they're still developing in many ways, and I do think for their future, definitely next year as well, they might have a little bit of a better season. But overall, I do think that the C grade is definitely well deserved, and we will see where they can go next season with hopefully a little bit more experience under their belts. 17th on the ladder, North Melbourne. I predicted them to finish 14th on the ladder. My overall grading for them is a D. Now, it's quite simple with North Melbourne. They've had a very terrible year beyond expectations. I think coming into this AFL season, they were a team that was extremely tough to decipher what kind of year they were going to have. They were either going to have a very overachieving year, they're going to be bang average in the middle, or they were going to be extremely underachieving. And I definitely think the worst has happened for North Melbourne. They were extremely underachieving. Yes, they had very good victories over some fantastic, talented teams, but at the end of the day, when you look at their overall season, it is a very bad season for them, a nightmare season, if you will, and it's showed in the way that they've handled their delistings over the past few days. I believe they've delisted 9 players. I think it could be more at this point, and one of their best forwards in Ben Brown is actually going to leave their club. So regardless of what you think of their season, they've definitely reacted in a way where they know that this is not a team that's going to lead them into the future, and I do think that they're trying to blow it up and and rebuild from the very beginning. So in my opinion, the D is definitely the right score for them. I mean, if you think about it, they were expected to finish around the 14th to around 15th, 16th area. So this is not too far away from them, at least in my opinion. But realistically, this was one of the worst seasons they could have ever possibly imagined. And finishing second last, I don't think many North Melbourne fans would have thought about it coming into this. But now they definitely have to face that reality. 16th, so the Sydney Swans. My prediction was 16th. Overall rating, a C+. With the Sydney Swans, I definitely think there was a lot more in terms of young players that you could possibly say with the Adelaide Crows or even North Melbourne, the teams below them. They are a very, very young side. I definitely think a lot younger than Adelaide. And not only that, they had a very good season compared to the teams below them. Now, of course, they finished where I expected them to finish, and that's why they're not getting anything above the C ranking, C+. But at the end of the day, with the level of team that they had, the young players, at the end of the season, they really got things together, and they did bring it to a lot of competitive teams. So whether you like it or not, I do think Sydney are well into their rebuild. I think they're going to be very happy with this season. It's not the best season by far, but it's definitely a season that I think they would take, considering a lot of people actually predicted them to be the one that was second last, and they ended up escaping that, even though it's not by much. With the Sydney Swans, you still have a lot of questions. I mean, Buddy Franklin, what's going to happen with him? Are they really going to take him on board with all these young players? They're also looking at probably a few of their veteran players might not wanting to stay with Sydney. But at the end of the day, I do think their young core that they're trying to build up has had an exceptional year. And they've proven that they can beat good teams on a given day. Now it's all about developing the consistency, developing their team as a whole. And I think you're going to see a lot more of Sydney in the next few years. They might not be fourth or fifth around that range, but I definitely think there could be a fighting chance for the 8 sooner rather than later. Maybe not next year, but in a few years down the line, why can't it happen? That's what I think about the Sydney Swans. Number 15, the Hawthorn Hawks. My prediction was 9th on the ladder. My overall grading for them is a D-. It's fair to say with Hawthorn that at the end of the day, they just had a nightmare season, a lot worse in my opinion than a North Melbourne. But overall, Hawthorn has probably had one of the worst seasons they could have possibly asked for. At the end of the day, so much happened to Hawthorn that it's hard to say that what is the main cause for Hawthorn not making the 8, whereas a lot of people expected them to be, a sneaker for the top 4, and why they actually finished so low as the 15th. But at the end of the day, or no matter what the reasons are, there is simply no excuse for a team that did have those players to end up falling to the 15th spot on the ladder. At the end of the day, the experience of that team should have taken them far, but in the end, that could have been their downfall. They seem to be very lackluster in the midfield and in their defense, and overall, it seemed to be a very inconsistent side, and it really showed. And they lost to a lot of very, very, very bad teams, and definitely got thrashed by a couple of good teams as well. On their day, Hawthorn actually provides good performances on their day, and so far for a lot of the season, it was never their day, and they fall 15th. And in my opinion, they probably had one of the worst drops in the AFL this year, and that's why they get one of the worst ratings that I'm going to give out in this video. Very harsh, but they deserve that criticism. Everybody expected so much from them, and I think they let a lot of people down this year. Number 14, the Gold Coast Suns. My AFL prediction was 18th. Overall rating is going to be an A-. Now, this is one of the ones where you have to understand my grading in terms of why I gave them an A- despite them finishing relatively low on the ladder. And this is one of the situations where a lot of people expected Gold Coast to finish last again this year after one of the worst seasons ever in AFL last year for them. At the end of the day, they've surprised a lot of people, and they've surprised a lot of teams. And in the end, for a lot of that season, they were actually in competition for the top 8 spot. So in reality, yes, after a very poor round 1, 3 months later they came back a whole different team. The young rookies took them to success, and what really halted them was their injuries. And again, a lot of teams do have these injuries concerns to talk about, but whatever you think about Gold Coast, they have surprised and stunned and made a lot of people very happy with their progression. A lot of people wanted them to not finish second last or last, including myself. Even I made it in that video. I didn't want them to finish last on the ladder, and I did think they could beat a lot of those teams. And I definitely think they had their best season for a long time, probably since Gary Ablett left for sure. So in reality, I'm very, very happy with their progression. I definitely think they deserve that A rating. Whatever you guys might think, it might be a little bit of an overstatement. Maybe I've overachieved them a little bit, but I definitely think they're deserving of that, especially with the quality of team that they had. No one expected them to finish 14th, and yet here they are. Very good season, and I do want to reflect that in that rating. Number 13, the Essendon Bombers. My AFL prediction was 12th. My overall rating for them is going to be a C. Now, with Essendon, I feel like a lot of people were very, very, very confused with their season. Very, very good start to the season, beat the likes of Collingwood, and then unfortunately dwindled down towards the end. And a lot of people are questioning what happened to Essendon. Why did they fall so down? But at the end of the day, I think a lot of people predicted that they would finish in this range. I mean, besides Essendon fans, I feel like Essendon fans really wanted this team to make the 8. But regardless of that, I really feel like a lot of people expected them to finish around 12 to 13, around the mid-table type of team, because that's where I feel like they are. And in reality, they did exactly what I expected, so I'm going to give them a C. But of course, you have to talk about their injuries. Essendon were one of the most injury listed teams in the AFL, and are reflected, because realistically, if their team was healthy, they might have had a shout for top 8. They probably still wouldn't have got in there, but at the end of the day, they would have at least had the shout and the opportunity, just like a lot of the teams above them did have that opportunity. So in saying that, a very disappointing end to the season, a very good start to the season. The injuries concerns for Essendon still reign supreme. They do have very good players on their team still, and I probably don't even see them finishing this low next year either if they can stay healthy. But regardless of that, this is exactly what I expected. I'm not going to say that I know the AFL or anything like that, but I'm just saying that I feel like a lot of people predicted this was going to happen for them. And with that reflection, they deserve to be where they are, and that's why they're going to get a C grading, up and down year. Pretty average in my opinion, and that's what's reflected in their ladder ranking. Number 12, the Fremantle Dockers. My position where I ranked them was 15th. My overall grading for them is a B+. Now, with the Fremantle Dockers, again, it's very similar to Essendon in a very up and down season. A lot of the season, they were second last, but the second half of the season, they had one of the best winning percentages out of every single team. They beat a lot of teams comfortably. They thumped a lot of teams. They beat teams like Collingwood when no one expected it. And overall, they beat teams like Melbourne, and they've had very good seasons. They had a very good season overall. Now, the questions that still remains for Fremantle is, what are they going to do with Jesse Hogan? A lot of rumours about him potentially getting delisted because he's not up to AFL level, and a lot of people are saying that towards the end of the season he really stepped up. I'm surprised that he even played this year, but overall the Fremantle Dockers style of play is extremely entertaining, extremely fast, and overall their legs is really what took them to this position. A lot of teams tired out, where Fremantle were one of the teams that really stuck with their training resume and actually continued to perform at the highest levels that they possibly could. They're a team that, in my opinion, definitely overachieved, and that's why they get their ranking, because they did what a lot of people didn't expect them to do. Yes, they had a certain style of play. They had very, very bad injuries coming into this season, but overall those injuries went away very quickly, and they were able to get consistent game time with a lot of their players that did end up returning. So I think this is a very fair result for Fremantle. I definitely think they had a much better season than what people predicted them to be, and I do think that their style of play will actually see them going even higher, maybe in a few years' time. We're going to have to see where Fremantle stays. Maybe this is their level, or maybe they overachieved. Who really knows? But at the end of the day, you can't sit here and say Fremantle did not have a good season. I definitely think they were one of the standouts that really overachieved this season. Number 11, the Carlton Blues, the Navy Blues. My prediction for them was 13th, and my overall score for them is A-. Now, with Carlton, I'm giving them a very high score here, and the reason why is because I sort of had this feeling that Carlton would break out of their shell of consecutive second last to third last positionings and really break out this year. Of course, they have one of the best players in the world in Cripps. They have a very good, stable forward line. Yes, they did have issues, as all young teams do. They were extremely inconsistent this year, but overall, I expected them to break out of the shell of being one of the mediocre teams in the AFL, and I really think they did that. They were in competition for top 8 for the longest time. Only, I believe, in the last 3 rounds is where they were not given that chance. But at the end of the day, I really think they had a tremendous season for what people would give them credit for. Now, me predicting 13th was a long shot. I never thought that it would have been higher than that, but yet they even went beyond my expectations, and that's why I really think Carlton deserved that rating. They deserved the A-, because I did not think anybody expected them to make the 8 this year, unless, of course, you're a Carlton fan. You obviously have faith in that team. But regardless, they did very, very well, and I do think they have a lot to be proud of. I do think they still have a lot to work on. You do have free agents that are very, very interested in signing for Carlton as well. I think their team is on the up, and I do think that they are a team that people should be looking out for in the next 2 years. And yeah, there's a lot of good things going on the Navy side, so let's see where that goes as well. Another young, exciting team that could potentially be very dangerous towards the next few seasons. Number 10, the GWS Giants. My prediction was first on the ladder. My AFL grading is going to be an F. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the absolute worst grading you could possibly give is been given, and I've given it to the GWS Giants. Now, on the course of things, they did not have a bad season in terms of the AFL. I mean, they finished 10th. They were fighting for top 8 for a long time, but at the end of the day, whether it's the protocols of what they had to do, or whether it was their injuries, or whether it was underperforming, they were expected to finish first in my eyes, and I feel like a lot of people's eyes, they were expected to finish first this season. I know people left their team. I know that they probably had one of the worst travels in terms of this entire situation of the AFL. I understand their situation, but at the end of the day, there is no excuse for finishing in the grand final last season to not making the AFL finals this year, not even making it into the top 8. I don't care what the excuses are. Overall, everybody had to suffer this season. Everybody had to scramble and fight and do things they weren't accustomed to. GWS are one of those teams that have to do it every season. They know this. They know what it's like. And a lot of Victorian teams had to adapt. I thought this was going to be one of the best seasons that I've seen out of them. I thought they had something to prove. I thought that they would actually make the finals again. And I really thought that this season would be now or never in terms of will they win the premiership. But unfortunately, they can't even have the opportunity anymore. And I don't think they're going to win one anytime soon now after this season. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they do come back next season with the fight, with the power. They have the quality to do it. But I just thought this season they would really fight and actually stand up. And unfortunately, they did not do that, and that's why they get their F grading. One of the worst falls in the AFL history. From people expecting them to be in 1st to 10th, that's 9 drops down, guys. I don't think people really understand how big of a drop that is, especially for a quality side like the Giants. So in reality, they even lost to Adelaide as well. So in reality, this has not been a good season for them. And I don't care if you're a GWS fan or an AFL fan, I don't feel like anybody should treat this Giants team as a good season. It just wasn't. Number 9, the Melbourne Demons. Where I expected it to finish was 11th, and my overall grading of this team is a B-. Now, of course, you might think I'm biased in this situation by giving Melbourne a B-, but you have to look, especially towards last season, exactly where we were. We were second last on the ladder. We had one of the worst underperforming teams in AFL history, from making it to the prelim all the way to falling to second last, and we had to build ourselves up. I don't think any Melbourne fan expected us to be back in the top 4, but I definitely expected Melbourne to be fighting for a position in the top 8, and that's exactly where they were for most, if not all, of the season. So in reality, Melbourne did exactly what they were supposed to do, but the only reason why I'm giving them a B- and not a C+ or a C is because they finished second last season, and basically with the same team, which is only a few additions, they were able to get to 9th on the ladder. Now, if you watch my AFL predictions video for the ladder way back in April, you would have seen exactly the weaknesses Melbourne had. The forward line cannot form structure overall. So many. I think they had the most forward 50 entries in the AFL, and they had the least score. So that's where Melbourne need to work on next season. But overall, I do think their team, Melbourne, is capable of more than the ninth. But in reality, unless they build towards a winning culture and they build towards getting chemistry in that forward line, I think ninth is their level at the moment. And let's see exactly where they'll go next year. If they make the 8, I think that is where they should be aiming for. But overall, they need to be doing a lot more than what they are with the team that they have. Number 8, the Collingwood Magpies. My expectation was 4th on the ladder, and my overall grading of the Collingwood Magpies would be a C-. Now, with Collingwood, you could say a lot of things to give them excuses to why they didn't finish higher this season. At the end of the day, finishing 8th for this team is actually a big achievement in my eyes because of all the things that did happen to their team. I mean, so many controversial issues happened, man. That a lot of players disgraced their club, their coach disgraced their club, and a lot of injuries really took them out of the game for a long period of time this season. And the best positive you could ever take out of Collingwood was the fact that they were able, throughout the majority of that season, to fight and stay within the top 8 range, and possibly by the end could have even went further than 8th. Unfortunately, the cards have been dealt, and they actually finished a lot lower than what a lot of people would have expected, but they actually managed to stay in the 8, and I think that's the biggest positive. But I can't give them higher because people expected so much better from them. Unfortunately, the season was filled with injuries and so many circumstances, and at the end of the day, those have to play part in this rating. They have to, because it's been one of the worst seasons in terms of what's actually happening outside the pitch for Collingwood than rather what's happening on the pitch as well. So think about it like that, and I do think you get a C-, maybe possibly go to the D+ range. But in my opinion, C- is exactly where this team should be, and let's see if they could develop in the 8 now. They have the chance. A lot of players will come back. I'm hoping for a good finals for Collingwood, but again, it could be a one game and they're out. So let's just see where Collingwood will actually go with the finals coming up. That's the first one in the finals. Let's see about the rest. Number 7, the Western Bulldogs. My AFL prediction was 8th, and my overall team grading is a C+. Now, with the Western Bulldogs, they had to have a lot of things go their way to make the 8, but overall, this season is one that they should definitely be proud of. Now, the reason why is that they've done the same thing that they've done their entire modern history, and that is have a great second half of the season. Their first half was a bit average, losing to a lot of teams that probably are very questionable, but also beat their rivals in the Giants, and overall had a very good and compelling end to the season that will make a lot of people excited to see what they can bring in the finals. And the reason why I give them a C+ is because of the situation against the West Coast Eagles, where they lost that game. They would not have a chance. They would have ended up falling, and you had Melbourne and you had Giants coughing up their games, and the Western Bulldogs in a very good situation beat a very quality team in the West Coast Eagles to actually give them that chance, and they ran away with it. So that's why I give them the C+. Overall, I expected them to be in the 8. I expected them to finish 8th, and for the most part, despite Collingwood's demise, they were going to finish 8th. So it's exactly where I expected them to be, and I only give them a C+ because of the circumstances that they went through to put themselves in the 7th position. I'm very happy and excited to see what can happen with the Western Bulldogs. Number 6, the Saints, St Kilda. My AFL ranking was 10th on the ladder, and the overall grade I'm giving them is an A-. Yet again, another team that over-delivered in what a lot of people expected. Now, when you think of St Kilda, a lot of people hype them this season, and they have every right to do it, as they've backed up what they've said in most cases. A lot of people actually thought St Kilda could be a sneaker pick for the top 4. Unfortunately, that didn't turn out to be the case, but I definitely think with the team that they have, they should have made the 8. And not only did they make the 8, I feel like they surprised a lot of people with how well they've played. They beat the likes of Port Adelaide in this season. A lot of teams that were expected to finish in the mid-table. St Kilda were one of those teams, and judging by where I suspected them to be and where they actually ended up, they were one of the teams that had a massive jump this year. Again, when you look at that team, you see the names on that team list, you expect them to have a good year. But in their very first year, to develop the chemistry that they did, the run that they did, the forward line, the midfield, they have one of the best midfields. They're very fast-paced. They're going to run you off your feet. And I do think that style of play will cause a lot of problems in the finals. I definitely suspect that they will have a very good finals run. But overall, don't give your hopes up. But I'm very, very happy with the progression St Kilda's made. I like St Kilda, and I definitely think that they deserve that A ranking, A- ranking, because they did what a lot of people didn't expect them to do in their first year together. Number 5, the West Coast Eagles, where I predicted them to finish was second, but my overall grade is going to be a C. Now, West Coast, it's probably harsh to give them a C, but you have to think of the circumstances. They were one of the teams that really had it rough, not being able to play in Perth, and I really think that affected them in a lot of their games towards the start of the season. I mean, they were the ones that got thumped by Gold Coast towards Gold Coast's winning streak that actually led to Gold Coast having a very good year. That happened on the case of West Coast. So at the end of the day, when you look at things, West Coast didn't have a great year, but overall, through all of their controversies, not being able to play in Perth, having to travel constantly before a lot of teams had to, they were ones that really had to suffer. But when they were able to play in Perth and play in their home ground, and I think they definitely got favoured in terms of when they actually played in Perth, they had a lot of games there. They were able to win 9 or 8 games in a row, and they really turned their season around. So I can't give them lower than a C. At the end of the day, yes, they didn't finish second. I think a lot of teams above them really did extremely well and overachieved, and they're going to get fantastic scores. But West Coast really, at the end of the day, does not deserve anything lower than that. It doesn't really deserve anything higher than that. Overall, with the quality of team that they have, they should be finishing higher, but I do think it's an average season based on the circumstances around their team towards the start and the end of the year. It really just reflects that they had an average year, and average for them is 5th, and they're still very, very favourable for finals. So keep your eyes on the West Coast Eagles. They might have something in store for you guys in the finals. Number 4. Geelong, the Geelong Cats. I predicted them to finish 6th, and my grading for them is a B. Now, that could be very low, but at the end of the day, Geelong have always been consistently a good team. They're a team that's aging. They have acquired some younger pieces, but the overall team is one that is very experienced, that can run as well, and they have a lot of depth in their team. And in saying that, the reason why I give them a B is because there were a lot of circumstances, just like a lot of other teams, that really could have stopped them. But especially with injuries in that retrospect. But not only that, they actually had one of the best second half seasons I've seen, man. Geelong were a team that were dangerous from the start. A lot of people were expecting them to be in the top 8 for sure. I don't think anyone had them falling out. But I don't think anyone expected them to be as dangerous as top 4. But that changed very quickly, and they ended up being one of the most dangerous teams in the AFL. So in my retrospect, they had a very good season. They overachieved. They get the B rating, and they are double chances now. They are one of those teams with double chances. If they lose in their game, they could have a second chance in the finals, and I definitely think that's what teams should be aiming for, and they've got that opportunity, so they should feel very, very proud of themselves. I don't think it's a big jump. I don't think it's an A or anything like that, but at the end of the day, they definitely did something that I don't think a lot of people expected them to do, and that's why they get my B rating. I'm very excited to see what they could do in the future as well. Number 3, the Richmond Tigers. My prediction was 3rd, and my overall team rating for them is a C+. Now, don't get me wrong, Richmond fans. I know you finished 3rd, but realistically, that's exactly where you should have finished. And I definitely think that this season was a lot of ups and downs compared to a lot of other seasons. Now, Richmond is a team, in my opinion, that doesn't need to finish first to win the premiership. In my opinion, they're one of the favourites, if not the favourites, to win the premiership again this year. They are very dangerous, and they continue to be very dangerous. However, there are many circumstances on and off the field as well that had made them a lot worse in terms of their reputation and some of the footy that they played. At the end of the day, when people went off into their own separate bubbles to play, Richmond had 8 people that didn't decide to play, and that really reflected in that period of time. And they had very poor performances. Some performances they barely won. Again, it shows the stature of a good team, but at the end of the day, with all those circumstances that did come into play, obviously towards the end of the season, you had two of their players that were caught breaking protocols, and again, it's just too many circumstances for Richmond that really affects their season. Maybe this all goes away if they win the finals, but at the end of the day, I definitely think that this was exactly where they were supposed to finish. They might have overachieved considering all of these things, which is why they're not just getting an average C and they get a C+. But at the end of the day, if anyone didn't expect Richmond to finish in the top 4 at the start of the year, I just think you were just having a very, very poor guess. I expected this and it happened, so I'm very excited about that. Let's see how they do in the finals. They're one of my favorites. Number 2, the Brisbane Lions. My prediction for them was 7th, and my overall grading is an A. Now, hear me out, Brisbane fans, because I know you're probably very upset that I even put you 7th because of the season that you had last year. But if you looked, especially at the time of making that video last year, you came off some beltings in the finals, despite finishing very high. And in my opinion, this could have been a definite threat for a one-hit wonder team. But you definitely proved me wrong this season. Not only did you get better, but I really think that you're not going to have a repeat of the finals that you had last season. And here's the reason why. Not all the time Brisbane had good performances in their games. I think that's a fact. I mean, a lot of games, especially against lower oppositions, came very close to beating Brisbane. But the fact is, when they were not performing, they still managed to find a way to win. Again, I've said this on a bunch of other teams like Collingwood, like Richmond, like West Coast. That is truly what makes a good team, when you don't perform and you win. And Brisbane have had certain situations where they don't perform and they win. Then they've had situations where they do perform and they smash teams. In my opinion, Brisbane is one of the most dangerous teams in the AFL at the moment, and they could potentially have a very good shout for finals footy, potentially making the grand final, definitely hopefully surviving their second chance opportunity. That's exactly where I see Brisbane going at the moment, and their season overall, I don't think anybody expected them to finish second. I really don't. I don't think anybody did. So A, in my opinion, is exactly where I'm going to give them. That's exactly where I think they should be, and in reality, they've had a fantastic season towards a lot of people's expectations. I feel like Brisbane and their fans probably expected this, but no one else really did. It's an A. They've done very, very well this year, and again, they're one of the teams to really look out for to see what they could deliver in the finals. And number 1, the first on the ladder, and it was Port Adelaide. My prediction was 5th on the ladder, and my overall grading for them is an A. Now, they're not going to get an A+ because I think a lot of people thought they were already a good team that were able to make the 8. But finishing first and staying first the entire season was incredible. They had, again, if you go watch my video back, I thought they were extremely well-rounded. I thought they were great in the forward line, they were great in the defense, and they were great in the midfield. And overall, when you're a very well-rounded team, you're more likely to win games than not. And it really showed with Port Adelaide, as they are first and were first for the entire year. Yes, they've had a little bit of blunders. They have lost to very poor sides. But in reality, they've won a lot more than they've lost. They've stayed first the entire year. And a lot of people, and I'm very happy I picked them as my sleeper pick, because not only were they not a sleeper pick this year, they were the best damn team this year. So Port Adelaide, I feel like you guys deserve a lot of round of applause for the achievements that you've made this year. Fantastic signs of what you could do for the future. Now, Port Adelaide is a team I still don't know about in finals football. I definitely think they're not a team that is favourable despite finishing first, but they are a team to look out for, because at the end of the day, first usually doesn't win it, but first has the best chance. So realistically, we're going to have to wait and see what Port Adelaide can deliver, but they definitely deserve that A grading. Again, you have a few players that actually are retiring for Port Adelaide at season's end. So this could be a now or never type situation, or this could definitely be the future is here, the future is now, and Port Adelaide, the future is now the present. And let's see where that goes. And that is going to be my grading of every AFL team. What do you guys think in the comments below? Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're new. How well did I do? Of course, this is one man's prediction. I do not know every single AFL team situation. I don't know every AFL player. I don't know all the circumstances for every single team, but at the end of the day, after looking at my predictions, looking at the actual AFL ladder, and looking at overall their season, what people had to say about them, I feel like a lot of these are justified. Some of them might be harsh, or some of them might be very generous, but at the end of the day, this is just what I think, and I would love to know what you guys think as well. Have a wonderful day. Take care, and peace.